Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker sent back the welcome wagon from Donald Trump. Let me tell you about it on Fed Up in Minnesota.
Presently sending a final update to the onboard computers for antenna management. And we have a go for auto sequence starts. And we have auto sequence starts. 4, 3, 2, 1.
We're all looking for Democrats to fight back. We're all looking for Democrats to hold the line and give Donald Trump what he actually deserves. A good old swift kick in the ass. And this is exactly what J.B. Pritzker, Illinois governor, did yesterday when he and a whole slew of other Democratic leaders and dignitaries from the Illinois political contingent stood up in a news conference to tell Donald Trump unequivocally he is not welcome in Chicago and that he needs to stay the fuck in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, Pritzker told him, "You are not welcome in Chicago."
I want to speak plainly about the moment that we are in and the actual crisis, not the manufactured one, that we are facing in this city and as a state and as a country. If it sounds to you like I am alarmist, that is because I am ringing an alarm, one that I hope every person listening will heed, both here in Illinois and across the country. Over the weekend, we learned from the media that Donald Trump has been planning for quite a while now to deploy armed military personnel to the streets of Chicago. This is exactly the type of overreach that our country's founders warned against. And it's the reason that they established a federal system with a separation of powers built on checks and balances. What President Trump is doing is unprecedented and unwarranted. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional. It is un-American. No one from the White House or the executive branch has reached out to me or to the mayor. No one has reached out to our staffs. No effort has been made to coordinate or to ask for our assistance in identifying any actions that might be helpful to us. Local law enforcement has not been contacted. We have made no requests for federal intervention. None. We found out what Donald Trump was planning the same way that all of you did. We read a story in the Washington Post. If this was really about fighting crime and making the streets safe, what possible justification could the White House have for planning such an exceptional action without any conversations or consultations with the governor, the mayor, or the police? Let me answer that question. This is not about fighting crime. This is about Donald Trump searching for any justification to deploy the military in a blue city, in a blue state, to try and intimidate his political rivals. This is about the President of the United States and his complicit lackey, Stephen Miller, searching for ways to lay the groundwork to circumvent our democracy, militarize our cities, and end elections. There is no emergency in Chicago that calls for armed military intervention. There is no insurrection. There is no insurrection. Like every major American city in both blue and red states, we deal with crime in Chicago. Indeed, the violent crime rate is worse in red states and red cities. Here in Chicago, our civilian police force and elected leaders work every day to combat crime and to improve public safety. And it's working. Not one person here today will claim we have solved all crime in Chicago, nor can that be said of any major American metro area. But calling the military into a U.S. city to invade our streets and neighborhoods and disrupt the lives of everyday people is an extraordinary action, and it should require extraordinary justification. Look around you right now. Does this look like an emergency? Look at this. Go talk to the people of Chicago who are enjoying a gorgeous afternoon in this city. Ask the families buying ice cream on the Riverwalk. Go see the students who are at the beach after school. Talk to the workers that I just met taking the water taxi to get here. Find a family who's enjoying today sitting on their front porch and ask if they want their neighborhoods turned into a war zone by a wannabe dictator. Ask if they'd like to pass through a checkpoint with unidentified officers in masks while taking their kids to school. Public safety has been among our highest priorities since taking office. We have hired more police and given them more funding. We banned assault weapons, ghost guns, bump stocks, and high-capacity magazines. We invested historic amounts into community violence intervention programs. We listened to our local communities, to the people who live and work in the places that are most affected by crime, and asked them what they needed to help make their neighborhoods safer. Those strategies have been working. Crime is dropping in Chicago. Murders are down 32% compared to last year and nearly cut in half since 2021. Shootings are down 37% since last year and 57% from 4 years ago. Robberies are down 34% year over year. Burglaries down 21%. Motor vehicle thefts down 26%. So in case there was any doubt as to the motivation behind Trump's military occupations, take note. 13 of the top 20 cities in homicide rate have Republican governors. None of these cities is Chicago. 8 of the top 10 states with the highest homicide rates are led by Republicans. None of those states is Illinois. Memphis, Tennessee, Hattiesburg, Mississippi have higher crime rates than Chicago, and yet Donald Trump is sending troops here and not there? Ask yourself why. If Donald Trump was actually serious about fighting crime in cities like Chicago, he, along with his congressional Republicans, would not be cutting over $800 million in public safety and crime prevention grants nationally, including cutting $158 million in funding to Illinois for violence prevention programs that deploy trained outreach workers to de-escalate conflict on our streets. Cutting $71 million in law enforcement grants to Illinois, direct money for police departments through programs like Project Safe Neighborhoods, the state and local anti-terrorism training program, and the Rural Violent Crime Reduction Initiative. Cutting $137 million in child protection measures in Illinois that protect our kids against abuse and neglect. Trump is defunding the police. To the members of the press who are assembled here today and listening across the country, I am asking for your courage to tell it like it is. This is not a time to pretend here that there are two sides to this story. This is not a time to fall back into the reflexive crouch that I so often see, where the authoritarian creep by this administration is ignored in favor of some horse race piece on who will be helped politically by the president's actions. Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points. If this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab. Look at the people assembled before you today, behind me. This is a full cross-section of Chicago's leaders from the business world, the faith community, law enforcement, education, community organizations, and more. We sometimes disagree on how to effectively solve the many challenges that our state and our city face on a daily basis. But today we are standing here united, in public, in front of the cameras, unafraid to tell the president that his proposed actions will make our jobs harder and the lives of our residents worse. Earlier today in the Oval Office, Donald Trump looked at the assembled cameras and asked for me personally to say, "Mr. President, can you do us the honor of protecting our city?" Instead, I say, "Mr. President, do not come to Chicago." You are neither wanted here nor needed here. Your remarks about this effort over the last several weeks have betrayed a continuing slip in your mental faculties and are not fit for the auspicious office that you occupy. Most alarming, you seem to lack any appropriate concern as our commander-in-chief for the members of the military that you would so callously deploy as pawns in your ever more alarming grabs for power. As a governor, I've had to make the decision in the past to call up members of the National Guard into active service. And I think it's worth taking a moment to reflect on how seriously I take that responsibility and on the many things that I consider before asking these brave men and women to leave their homes and their communities to serve in any capacity for us. As I've said many times in the past, members of the National Guard are not trained to serve as law enforcement. They are trained for the battlefield, and they're good at it. They are not trained to arrest people and read them their Miranda rights. They did not sign up for the National Guard to fight crime. And when we call them into service, we are reaching into local communities and taking people who have jobs and families away from their neighborhoods and the people who rely upon them. It is insulting to their integrity and to the extraordinary sacrifices that they make to serve in the Guard, to use them as a political prop, where they could be put in situations where they will be at odds with their local communities, the ones that they seek to serve. I know Donald Trump doesn't care about the well-being of the members of our military, but I do. And so do all the people standing here. So let me speak to all Illinoisans and to all Chicagoans right now. Hopefully the president will reconsider this dangerous and misguided encroachment upon our state and our city's sovereignty. Hopefully rational voices, if there are any left inside the White House or the Pentagon, will prevail in the coming days. If not, we are going to face an unprecedented and difficult time ahead. But I know you, Chicago, and I know you are up to it. When you protest, do it peacefully. Be sure to continue Chicago's long tradition of nonviolent resistance. Remember that the members of the military and the National Guard who will be asked to walk these streets are, for the most part, here unwillingly. And remember that they can be court-martialed and their lives ruined if they resist deployment. Look to the members of the faith community standing behind me today for guidance on how to mobilize. To my fellow governors across the nation who would consider pulling your National Guards from their duties at home to come into my state against the wishes of its elected representatives and its people, you would be failing your constituents and your country. Cooperation and coordination between our states is vital to the fabric of our nation, and it benefits us all. Any action undercutting that and violating the sacred sovereignty of our state to cater to the ego of a dictator will be responded to. The state of Illinois is ready to stand against this military deployment with every peaceful tool we have. We will see the Trump administration in court. We will use every lever at our disposal to protect the people of Illinois and their rights. Finally, to the Trump administration officials who are complicit in this scheme, to the public servants who have forsaken their oath to the Constitution to serve the petty whims of an arrogant little man, to any federal official who would come to Chicago and try to incite my people into violence as a pretext for something darker and more dangerous, we are watching and we are taking names. This country has survived darker periods than the one that we're going through right now, and eventually the pendulum will swing back, maybe even next year. Donald Trump has already shown himself to have little regard for the many acolytes that he has encouraged to commit crimes on his behalf. You can delay justice for a time, but history shows you cannot prevent it from finding you eventually. If you hurt my people, nothing will stop me, not time or political circumstance, from making sure that you face justice under our constitutional rule of law.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to all of the state and local county leaders that are here with us today. So let's just get to the facts. Over the past 2 years, we have seen significant reductions in crime and violence. In the last year alone, we have seen more than a 30% decline in homicides. We've launched a robberies task force with the Chicago Police Department, effectively reducing robberies by almost 35%. We've worked closely with CPD to restructure the Detectives Bureau to bring the clearance rate up to 76%. It's the highest we've seen in more than a decade. We've worked with the Chicago Police Department and our Community Violence Intervention, CVI partners, to reduce shootings by almost 40%. Almost 40%. We've done that in 1 year. This is significant progress, and it's historic progress. We've had the safest April in the city of Chicago since 1962, more than 6 decades. And according to FBI data, Chicago is not in the top 25 of the most dangerous cities in the United States. And these facts are indisputable and widely acknowledged. Yet there are those who want to twist our words to make it seem as though we think that our job is finished. So let me be perfectly clear. Our work to make our city safer still continues. And while we have made progress, that doesn't mean that we will rest. In fact, we know that we have more work to do. And that work is what wakes me up every single day. It's what I think about before I go to bed. That is our focus every single day, and it will continue to be our top priority until Chicagoans feel safe in their neighborhoods. We cannot call ourselves a safe city until every Chicagoan in our beloved city feels safe, whether you live in Austin or North Lawndale or South Shore. Every single Chicagoan deserves to feel safe. There are those who might ask, if we are not even in the top 25 most dangerous cities, then why are we now being targeted by the Trump administration for a military occupation? We are being targeted because of what and who we represent. Chicago was known as a working class city. We are the birthplace of the labor movement, and we will always be a union town. But we're also a diverse city. Black and Latina, Asian, indigenous, and whites. We are a city with vibrant neighborhoods that represent every single nationality and every immigrant community from around the world, with more than 40 different language groups that are spoken in homes across Chicago. And we are a progressive city. We believe in investing in people. We believe in standing up for the most vulnerable among us. We believe that the solution to homelessness is not the National Guard, but it is housing. Building affordable housing across American cities should be our top priority. We believe that the solution to immigration is not to separate families and throw grandmothers into the back of vans with unmarked vans and masked individuals. The solution is comprehensive immigration reform that allows anyone who wishes to come to our city or our country, if they want to work, they should have a pathway to citizenship.
Thank you for being here. Though the circumstances that Trump is seeking to create are both deeply unfortunate and obviously unnecessary. Donald Trump never had the courage himself to raise his right hand and serve his country in uniform. But let me just say from personal experience, and that consists of 23 years in the military, 17 of which proudly as a member of the Illinois National Guard, that the men and women who are brave enough to wear this country's flag on their shoulder are doing so to defend our nation's rights and freedoms, not to protect a tin pot dictator's thin skin or to police their own neighbors. It's not what they signed up for, and it's certainly not what their training is focused on. I don't want to repeat too much of what Governor Pritzker had just laid out, so let me just say that it should come as no surprise that Donald Trump is once again attacking Chicago. He has for a long time, and he will probably keep on doing it for years to come. It is because he is afraid of us. But his attacks don't do anything to change the reality that he has a long pattern of politicizing and misusing our nation's military for his own partisan gain and to crush dissent, and that is beyond outrageous. I went to war. I was federalized as a member of the National Guard to defend America's freedoms. So you better believe that I'm going to speak out when he's doing his damnedest to keep other Americans from speaking out, from exercising their First Amendment rights. And let me say it again, one of the most patriotic things you can do in this nation isn't necessarily serving in uniform. It is standing up and exercising your First Amendment rights and speaking truth to power. We know that Trump's actions are not about law and order. Give me a break. We know this for 1,001 reasons, but I will give you one. Because Trump is flagrantly, even today, refusing to coordinate with state and local officials. Just this morning, I was in touch with the National Guard officials, and they confirmed to me that he has not reached out to them. And if he really cared about health and safety, he wouldn't have cut millions of dollars in gun violence prevention funding just weeks ago. Instead, this is just another sad, desperate attempt by a small man to distract the American people from the price spikes his own policies are still causing and the countless personal scandals he's trying to sweep under the rug and hope that we don't notice. We should not get distracted, but he also should not be forcing our Guardsmen and women to have to be away from their loved ones, forcing them to take time off from their full-time jobs simply to stroke his own ego. And let me be clear, our military will feel the cost of this PR stunt as it take resources and focus away from the real missions they need to train for. What they should be doing is preparing for air assault missions. They should be preparing for convoy operations. They should be training to help us in the event of a flood or a tornado and other natural disasters. They should be training to fight, to take the fight to the enemies abroad, not to bring the fight to neighbors here at home. He is also inflicting reputational damage on our nation's military, which is supposed to be nonpartisan. He is taking it and he is deploying our troops on the streets of our nation's communities and hurting the readiness of the greatest fighting force on the face of the earth. Frankly, all this would be embarrassing if it weren't so devastating for those involved and so terrifying for the future and the security of our nation. Forcing the military uninvited into Chicago to intimidate Americans in their own neighborhoods does not make our nation stronger. It simply distracts our service members from executing their core mission of keeping Americans safe from the real adversaries who wish to do us harm. It's yet another unwarranted, unwanted, and unjust move straight out of the authoritarian's playbook that will only undermine our military's readiness and ultimately weaken our national security. Donald Trump should be worried about and should be focused on standing up to Vladimir Putin. Instead, he rolls out the red carpet for him. Donald Trump should be supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia, and yet he does nothing of the sort. Donald Trump should be fighting the Houthis rebels, and yet he has not been able to do that, spending millions of dollars to ineffectively try to stop them from stopping shipping in the Red Sea. Maybe if Donald Trump hadn't dodged a draft so many times, and by the way, that's 5 times that he dodged a draft when his nation called and he decided, ouch, my bone spurs are hurting, he would have actually learned something about keeping our country strong. But that is obviously too much to expect from Cadet Bone Spurs.
Make no mistake, the threat of federal troops to Chicago is not a serious effort to reduce crime in the neighborhoods of this city or our state. If it were a serious effort, it would be a coordinated effort with the mayor, the governor, law enforcement officials at all levels. It is not. The notion that we are engaging the National Guard in law enforcement has been described by each of the previous speakers, and I won't get into detail. But the men and women of the National Guard, I am proud to say, have served our nation and our country honorably over and over again. Proof positive, Senator Tammy Duckworth. She deserves a round of applause. When it comes to law enforcement, that is not the job of the National Guard, and that's not what they're trained for. And this president is making a point of cherry-picking blue cities and blue states on his crime campaign. As the mayor and the governor and others have said repeatedly, if you're looking for the worst of the worst, Chicago is not the first stop at all. There are so many other communities, even red communities, if you allow me to describe them as such, where there is much more needed. The real reason for Trump's action is clear. He is in the process of accelerating mass deportation. If you don't believe it is alive and well, speak to your friends in Little Village and Pilsen, as I have. The people who run the restaurants and the shops, the churches, and they'll tell you what's happened with the fear that is in this community today. And this is something that Donald Trump wants to build on. The goal to deport 3,000 immigrants a day. They've stated it publicly. That's what they're setting out to do. And sadly, they're marching toward that goal. It is one thing for Trump to give speeches as he has and to warn us of immigrants that are rapists and terrorists and murderers and criminally insane. But the reality is this. Of those who have been deported, fewer than 1 out of 10 have any criminal record whatsoever. Fewer than 1 out of 10. 90% of the people facing deportation have been doing their best to be good citizens, paying their taxes, raising their kids, going to the same churches we attend, and they expect us to stand up for them, and we should today. I think it's imperative that we do. There's a reason that our Constitution, laws, and history hold back presidents from invading cities and states. This is an act of political theater by Donald Trump, and sadly, we have to take it extremely seriously. My friends, don't walk away and say this is just another political issue. This is how democracies die, when people don't stand up and speak up for the basic constitutional rights and freedoms which are part of us in this country. It's time for us to stand up and make sure we state our position under the First Amendment by assembly and gathering, and I've been to many of them. I want to salute the leaders for always making a point of saying they should be peaceful and nonviolent. That's the starting point. The second part of it is the fact that in our mid-year election, which we're facing in a year and a few, half the voters who are eligible actually turn up. That's the job for all of us to change. They can talk about reapportionment and redistricting. We need to register and make sure our numbers turn up in a way that makes a serious difference in the governorship of this country.
So as you can see, we have a handful of leaders emerging from the Democratic Party, and J.B. Pritzker is one of them. There are a few others, and there's about 20 or 30 maybe in Congress altogether. And this is an impressive display of a man putting his foot down and standing up for our values, for democracy, what we all believe in, and standing up against a bully dictator. And make no mistake, the crime and insanity that the Führer, Donald Trump, Mr. Fascist, is talking about is entirely his reference to undocumented immigrants who he claims are murderers, rapists, and criminally insane. And don't for one moment fall for that. That's the crime he's talking about cleaning up. That's his excuse to come into Chicago, or to say that he wants to, or any other city in the United States, and is a complete faux line of total bullshit propagandists. BS. My name is Scott Schneider, and I am fed up in Minnesota.